9 skilled hikers set out into the frozen Ural Mountains in 1959. They were young, intelligent, and determined to challenge themselves against one of the harshest winter terrains in the Soviet Union. But just weeks later, they're lifeless. Bodies were discovered, scattered across the snow in terrifying and unexplained ways. Their tent ripped open from the inside, some stripped, almost naked in the freezing cold. Others carrying injuries that could only be compared to the impact of a car crash. What happened on that mountain? This is the chilling mystery of the Dyatlov Pass Incident. The group consisted of 9 experienced hikers, most of them students from the Ural Polytechnic Institute in Sverdlovsk. Their leader, Igor Dyatlov, was a respected outdoorsman, admired for his intelligence and discipline. Alongside him were 8 others, friends, classmates, young men and women full of energy and ambition. Their ages ranged from just 20 to 24. They named their expedition after Mount Otorten, a peak they intended to conquer, meaning "don't go there" in the local Mansi language. A name that now seems like a chilling warning. But despite the name, their journey began with laughter and hope. Diaries found later showed jokes, campfire songs, and playful teasing. They documented everything, never imagining that their own writings and photographs would become part of a haunting investigation. The expedition was expected to last about 3 weeks. Dyatlov had promised to send a telegram to the sports club once they returned. But when the expected message never came, concern slowly turned into alarm. Days passed with no word. Families began demanding answers. On February 20th, a full-scale search was ordered, involving students, local volunteers, military units, and helicopters. The vast snowy wilderness of the Urals was unforgiving. The search was slow, dangerous, and exhausting. But rescuers were determined to uncover what had happened to the 9 missing hikers. On February 26th, the searchers found something. Half buried in snow, a lone tent stood silently on the slopes of Khalat Syakhl, known to locals as the Mountain of the Dead. The scene was unsettling. The tent was still pitched, but collapsed under snow. More disturbing, it was cut open from the inside. It was as though the hikers had clawed their way out in panic, abandoning boots, coats, and food. Money, journals, even personal belongings lay untouched, but of the hikers, there was no trace. The investigators found footprints leading away from the tent. At first glance, they seemed orderly, as if the hikers were walking calmly, not running. But what stood out was the lack of footwear. Some prints showed only socks, others bare feet, and just one pair in boots. The trail stretched for nearly half a mile into the darkness of the forest until it disappeared into the snow. What force could drive 9 experienced hikers to abandon warmth and shelter and walk half-naked into temperatures colder than -30 degrees? Following the trail, the rescuers would soon find their first horrifying answers. Edge of the forest, beneath a tall cedar tree, 2 bodies were discovered. They were dressed in only underwear. Their hands and feet were bloodied, their fingertips raw, as though they had tried desperately to climb the tree. The bark bore scratch marks high up the trunk, suggesting frantic attempts to escape something. Nearby, the remains of a small fire were found, as if they had fought to survive against the bitter cold. But in such conditions, without clothes, survival was impossible. Searchers pressed on and soon found 3 more bodies between the cedar and the tent. Igor Dyatlov was among them. The positioning of the corpses suggested they were trying to crawl back uphill to their camp, as if desperately attempting to return to safety. But none of them made it. Their frozen faces showed no sign of struggle, only exhaustion and silent horror. Yet the mystery deepened. Why had none of them returned to the tent for the clothing and supplies that could have saved their lives? 2 months later, the final 4 hikers were found in a ravine, buried under meters of snow. Unlike the others, their deaths were not from cold alone. One woman's chest was crushed with immense force, her ribs shattered. Another's skull bore a massive fracture. And yet, strangely, their skin showed no external wounds, as if the damage had been delivered by an invisible force. Even more chilling, one hiker's eyes were missing. Another's tongue had vanished completely. These were not the signs of frostbite, nor the injuries of an avalanche. Something else had happened in that forest. For decades, speculation has surrounded the Dyatlov Pass Incident. Some point to an avalanche, forcing the hikers to flee, but the slope was too shallow and no avalanche traces were ever found. Others suggest military tests, parachute mines, or radiation exposure indeed. Some of the clothing carried unexplained radioactive traces. Locals spoke of fireballs seen in the sky that night. Could it have been weapons testing? Or even something not of this earth? In 2019, Russian authorities officially reopened the case, concluding that a rare slab avalanche was to blame. But many experts argue that the evidence doesn't fit. The mystery remains unresolved. To this day, no theory can fully explain the missing eyes, the missing tongue, the extreme internal injuries, and the decision to abandon the safety of the tent. More than 60 years later, the Dyatlov Pass Incident stands as one of the greatest mysteries of the modern era. 9 young lives frozen forever in the snow of the Urals. Today, hikers and relatives still place flowers at their memorial, honoring their courage. Yet the unanswered questions echo louder than ever. What happened on that mountain in February 1959? Was it nature, man, or something else entirely? Perhaps we will never truly know.